G'day, g'day. My name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. We have a huge weekend with the new Spider-Man. Let's dive into these numbers. So, starting with the top 10, we've got a lot to talk about because at number 1 there is Spider-Man A Brand New Day, and yes, that is not a typo. That is $30.4 million opening in the Aussie box office. That is insane. So we're going to dive into all the charts that just smashed through after the top 10, but as a quick countdown, that's obviously the highest opening of 2026 by far. It's over double the opening of The Odyssey. It's the highest July opening of all time at the Australian box office, and it's the second highest opening of all time at the Australian box office. 30.4 million. The only movie that beat it is Avengers Endgame in 2019 that brought in an opening weekend of $34 million. We're going to dive way more into Spider-Man after the top 10 if you want to see Spider-Man at the Aussie box office. At number 2, holding pretty well considering how much Spider-Man stole, was The Odyssey in its third week of release that brought in another $6.1 million, dropping 46% for a current total of $39.7 million, rapidly moving up the 2026 chart. At number 3 is Toy Story 5, in a trend that is very common because Spider-Man sucked all the money out of the box office, dropping 48%, bringing in another $600,000 in its 7th week of release for a current total of $44.9 million. Moana, the live action, brought in $570,000, dropping 54% in its 4th week of release for a current total of $15.1 million. And rounding out the top 5 is Minions and Monsters, bringing in another $350,000. Its 6th week in release, dropping 55% for a current total of $22.8 million. Moving on to 6 through 10, The Invite brought in $280,000 in its 4th week of release, dropping 31% for a current total of $2.4 million. Obsession, still at number 7, in its 12th week of release, bringing in $126,000, dropping 56% for a current total of $24.5 million. Colors of Time brought in $70,000 in its 2nd week, dropping just 22% for a current total of $211,000. And this is where you really start to see how much money Spider-Man sucked out of the box office. The Blue Trail at number 9 brought in $35,000 and made it into the top 10. And Jaya Nayagan brought in $26,000 in its 2nd week of release in something that's very, very common but we don't see on the chart very often, dropping 96% for a current total of $760,000. That heavy drop is very, very common with Indian cinema, but normally week 2, they're out of the top 10, so you never actually get to see their percentage drop. There you go. That's one right there. So first, a quick update to the top openings of 2026, which is a very, very quick update because Spider-Man Brand New Day takes number 1 by far with ease, dropping The Odyssey down to number 2 with its $13.4 million opening. The Devil Wears Prada 2 goes down to number 3 with its $11 million opening, and then Toy Story 5 and the Super Mario Galaxy movie move down to 4 and 5. Michael, which is the current highest grossing movie of 2026, is now out of the top 5 openers of the year, but it just had really, really good legs. Updating the chart that we just looked at like a couple of weeks ago, the top July openings at the Aussie box office of all time has a new number 1 with Spider-Man Brand New Day. Its $30 million opening bumps The Lion King down to number 2 and then shimmies everything down the chart 1. The Odyssey is now the 9th highest opening July of all time, which is still really impressive, but obviously Spider-Man takes the crown here. And here's a quick chart that I didn't think I'd have to make, but it surprised me when I did. The top 10 openings, just outright, the top 10 openings of all time at the Australian box office, the top opening wide weekends. Spider-Man Brand New Day with its $30.4 million lands at number 2 in this chart. The Avengers Endgame in 2019 holds number 1 with $34.1 million, but you can see this is dominated by Spider-Man, Star Wars, and the Avengers. with a couple of odd ducks around like The Lion King from 2019, Barbie from 2023, Deathly Hallows Part 2, Harry Potter, that was a real big thing back in the day, from 2011, the oldest movie on this list, at number 9 with an $18.1 million opening. So there is the top 10 openers at the Australian box office of all time as far as my records show. So there's no real mystery as to where Spider-Man Brand New Day opens in terms of compared to the other Spider-Man movies, because it's the second highest opening movie of all time. But out of curiosity's sake, this is how Spider-Man movies stack up with their opening weekends at the Aussie box office. You can see they've all done pretty well, apart from Into the Spider-Verse, which was animated, and that no one really knew about it back then. I did. I went and saw it. It was great. But by the end of it, everyone knew, whoa, this is really cool. But it was the only really low opener. Even The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 opened pretty well. Spider-Man has just always been a hit. And if we shimmy across to Spider-Man movies and their total gross, this is sorted high to low, we can see Spider-Man Brand New Day, after just its opening weekend, has already brought in more than the entire run of Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse. By next weekend, it's going to have passed the original Spider-Man from 2002, Across the Spider-Verse from 2023, and Spider-Man Far From Home from 2019. It's then got a long way to go to catch Spider-Man No Way Home from 2021, but it did open bigger, so we'll have to see how it legs out as we watch this chart move forward. In terms of the entire MCU, this is every opening of every MCU movie at the Aussie box office. Spider-Man Brand New Day is down there, right second highest opening of all time, just behind Endgame, and I've highlighted in context the last few MCU movies: Fantastic Four First Steps, Captain America Brave New World, and Thunderbolts, how much they opened with. So, just for context difference, Spider-Man, whole other beast. And then if we shift across to MCU totals, we can see Spider-Man in its opening weekend has brought in more than Iron Man 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor the Dark World, Doctor Strange. The last few MCU movies like First Steps, Thunderbolts, Brave New World, it's brought in more already in its opening weekend than those movies did their entire run. Smash hit, absolutely bananas. I expected it to do big numbers. I didn't expect it to do this big numbers. Moving across to the 2026 top 10 at the Australian box office, so this one's going to change a lot over the next few weeks. Right now, Michael still holds the number one spot with $46.5 million. Toy Story 5 is at number 2 with $44.9 million, and The Devil Wears Prada 2 is at number 3 with $43.1 million. The Odyssey has moved up to number 4 with $39.7 million, which drops the Super Mario Galaxy movie down to number 5 with $39.5 million, and Project Hail Mary goes down to number 6 with its $39.3 million. Spider-Man Brand New Day enters the chart after its opening weekend at number 7 with $30.4 million. It's going to rapidly climb this chart. Obsession drops down to number 8 with $24.5 million. Minions and Monsters goes down to number 9 with $22.8 million. And Wuthering Heights, that opened much earlier this year with its $20.3 million, drops down to number 10. Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu is out of the 2026 Aussie box office top 10. No Star Wars movie. I didn't have high hopes for that movie, but I thought it might end up on the top 10. Moving on to upcoming releases. So the 6th of August, wide releases. We don't have a lot. Nothing wanted to compete with the week 2 of Spider-Man. So we have some different movies that isn't going to cannibalize the same audience. Super Troopers 3, the latest entry in this franchise, once again directed by Jay Chandrasekhar and starring the same as well as Kevin Heffernan, Paul Sota, and Steve Lemmy. We also have Holy Days, a local New Zealand comedy drama directed by Natalie Bolt and starring Judy Davis, Miriam Margolyes, and Jackie Weaver. We also have Ice Cream Man, a new horror from director Eli Roth, starring Ari Millen and Charlie Zelter. And in limited release, so check your smaller and indie cinemas, we have A Tease, Light the Way in Cinemas, the big cinematic showing from A Tease, the K-pop boy band that I totally know all about and definitely didn't have to look up what the hell that was. We also have Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, a very buzzy horror comedy from director Jane Schurbaum, starring Hannah Elbinder and Gillian Anderson. Got a lot of buzz earlier in the year from the festival circuit, so if horror comedies are your jam, or tropes on horror, I think that one should be right up your alley. Moving on to streaming, we do have a few things here. We have The Last House, a new sci-fi horror from director Louise Leterrier, starring Wagner Moura and Greta Lee. It drops on Netflix on the 7th of August. We also have Star Wars Visions Presents The Ninth Jedi, a new spin-off series from Star Wars Visions, and if you want to catch up, watch Season 1, Episode 5 of Star Wars Visions and Season 3, Episode 3 of Star Wars Visions. That will get you up to date with this storyline, which is because it's an anthology series, the Star Wars Visions. So you don't have to watch them back to back or start to finish. You can watch those single episodes and be up to date on The Ninth Jedi. It's about the Ninth Jedi. But it drops on Disney Plus on August 5th. We also have Sterling Point, a new mystery drama series on Amazon Prime, created by Megan Park, who I think has some good talent, starring Ella Rubin and Amelie Hoffarelli, and it releases on the 5th of August on Amazon Prime. We also have The Shards, a new drama series from creators Ryan Murphy and Brett Easton Ellis, starring Igby Rigney, Kaya Gerber, and Homer Gear. It releases on the 6th of August on Disney+. In returning series, we have 100 Years of Solitude, returning for its second season on Netflix on the 5th of August, after season 1 was back in 2024. So, only 4 movies for this week's challenge, so let's just get right into it. First up was Man on Fire from 2004, directed by Tony Scott and starring Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning, and Christopher Walken. The original movie that had a TV remake that was pretty decent, and my 4th Denzel Washington Tony Scott movie that I've watched or rewatched this year. It's about a washed up CIA operative who takes on a bodyguard role and has to get back in the game when a little girl he was looking after gets kidnapped. Really solid movie. No one makes action movies quite like Tony Scott did. RIP to a real one, and Denzel also does great as usual. Next up was a big release for the week, Spider-Man Brand New Day, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton and starring Tom Holland, Zendaya, and John Bernthal, giving us a follow-up to Spider-Man No Way Home and a bit of a reset with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I really dug this one. I think for me, it's probably the best MCU-era Spider-Man movie, and the first one that felt like a Spider-Man movie first, with some Marvel elements without being a Marvel flat tone, just generic blob. Really rock solid movie, really good movie, but I think pretty much all of Australia saw it, so I don't need to talk about it. Next up was a 2026 catch-up comedy of Little Brother, directed by Matt Spicer and starring John Cena and Eric Andre. An estranged little brother from a childhood Big Brother program reunite as adults and chaos ensues. While comedy movies are carried by the subjective nature of the comedy, this one only partially landed for me. A lot of jokes missed or didn't land properly or didn't work or were just not my type of humour. But some did, and that was its saving grace for me. Without those handful of jokes that did land, and sequences and comedy sketches that did work, this would have been much more painful to watch. So, saved from being terrible, but mileage may vary, and I wouldn't call it good. I would call it saved from being bad. Finally was a long-time watch-listed movie from 2019 called Fast Colour. Directed by Julia Hart and starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Saya Sidney, and Lorraine Toussaint. It tells of the light sci-fi story of a woman with superhuman powers is on the run and ends up having to hide with her estranged mother in her hometown. A neat little sci-fi that was heavy on the drama and symbology of the superhuman powers rather than the more flashy comic book type powers we are used to. Interesting little movie, not for everyone, but I enjoyed it, and it was good to get it finally off my list. That is why I do these challenges. This week's Cinechums movie challenge is dual credits. So basically, anyone that is credited twice for a movie, writer-director, actor-director, actor-writer, etc. A few people have kicked it off with a few there, but we've also got a few things like Dances with Wolves, Clerks, Argo, Avatar, Escape from New York, Her. We've got a few to choose from. Let's have a look at my shortlist. On my shortlist, I have a few things like Tekken, or one of the Street Fighter movies, Wuthering Heights, the drama, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Confess Fletch, Izzy Gets the Heck Across Town, Steel, and Playtime. We've got lots to choose from, so we'll see how we go. That is it for me this week. Tune in next week where we're going to be crunching Spider-Man Week 2. What is its drop-off going to be? I think it's going to be a massive drop-off because it opened so huge, but we're going to compare its drop-off and see how it does in its second week of release. It just opened to $30 million, which by all accounts is record-breaking, but its week 2 drop is going to be significant, but it could still bring in a lot of money in its week 2. A big percentage drop on $30 million is still a lot of money. I have a massive attack gig on Thursday night, so I'll be keeping a low profile next weekend. Just small catch-up movies, I think, from 2026 to start prepping my end-of-year lists. But that's it from me. Have a good one. Like, follow, subscribe if you do want to do that jam. And otherwise, watch more movies. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.